G'day everyone. Back in the day we had Windows 3.0 installed. At the time it was more of a curiosity rather than something useful, primarily because we didn't have any application software for it. We did play with the games such as Solitaire and Reversi, and used Paintbrush for making a few simple images. Eventually we did use it for some basic gaming with the Best of Entertainment pack. As a youngster, I was learning to program with GWBasic, and something I often did was attempt to clone things I found interesting in order to try and figure out how something worked. Windows was one of those things I tried to clone. Now you might ask yourself, how could you possibly even think about trying to make a GUI-like interface with multiple applications in a simple language like GWBasic? The user interface isn't too difficult to imagine. There are decent drawing and input commands which make it feasible to implement. Linking multiple programs together was achieved with two statements, common and chain. The common statement allows you to share variables between programs, and chain loads and runs a program whilst retaining these shared variables. What I did was pass common information between programs, such as data for the user interface, but also the list of active programs, to in effect allow a user to switch between them. One disadvantage being that a program would have to save or load its state when this happens, so multitasking isn't possible, and there are load times when switching programs. I called my sort of clone Farout and made it in my early teens. I got most of the basics implemented, such as a program manager, and a few of many ideas for applications I had. Of course, it was very incomplete and had little functionality. Let's take a quick look at what I did manage to build. One of the most important programs you need is something to act as a hub, allowing access to all the other programs. I made a simple program manager to fill that role. It was adequate for loading and running programs, but doesn't implement modifying the contents of the programs or groups well. Although it's kind of silly to make a separate program for a simple clock, I made this partly because Windows had one. I made an attempt at a simple word processor. With a bit of work, this could have been usable. The main issue it has is not responding to special keys, like arrow keys, and not being able to delete text. I made a simple graphic editor for modifying the graphics format I was using at the time. It was tedious to modify an image as you had to type the number of the colour you wanted. It was a useful step in learning, as a later image editor would be based on this one, only better. I ported my jump game to work in the environment, the only major difference being it ran in a smaller window and cooperated with the other programs. There were numerous other projects I started, but didn't really come anywhere near finishing, such as an attempt at a programming language of my own. I can only imagine how slow it would have been. As a whole, Farout was a big failure, but that's mostly due to how ambitious I was in attempting something so large when I was still quite young and mostly interested in making games. Had I actually finished some useful applications, it would have been at least a little useful. However, it was an excellent learning experience in how such a system could be assembled, and the sorts of challenges involved in such an undertaking. Just because I failed to make a usable GUI in software doesn't mean it's impossible to implement something workable in GWBasic. We've seen in previous videos about pop-off and arrows that mouse support is certainly possible, as is a simple GUI. Couple that with the capabilities I used to make Farout, and you most certainly could create a usable GUI with a suite of applications and games. Should you try to create something like that in GWBasic? No, probably not. If you liked today's video, please hit like and subscribe. Thanks for watching, and I'll catch you next time.